So straight from the get-go, I know nothing about football. I can probably name like 5 footballers. If I'm pushed, maybe 6. But I know who David Beckham is. So I watched the documentary. Actually, I was more forced into watching it. My partner was watching it. So I started watching bits of it. And then I ended up watching it more. Truth be told, I was way more of a Spice Girls fan than I ever was a David Beckham fan, and especially than I ever was a football fan. Although Posh was never my favourite Spice Girl, but she did very well in that documentary. Can we just take a moment just to appreciate the down-to-earth nature and the I don't give a fuck attitude that she really brought to the programme. The fact that she went through all this trauma of how people treated her and what the press and the tabloids said about her, and the way she handles it in the documentary is just absolutely hilarious, honestly. It made me like her way more than I've ever liked her before. Point being, I'm getting carried away already. You care about what you missed from the documentary, so that's what we're going to talk about here are just 3 major things that you either missed completely or was glazed over by this nicely polished documentary painting David Beckham as this absolute saint. And I'm not saying he's a bad person, I'm just saying there's a few things that weren't really mentioned much at all or just completely glossed over. Number 1, Qatar, right? This is very kind of recent stuff, the World Cup. David Beckham was an ambassador and it got a lot of backlash. You would have thought that the backlash made it to the documentary, but it didn't. So I looked into this a little bit. There's this article on the Huffington Post where the director explains why it was pulled from the final edit, because it turns out that it was in there and it was meant to be in there. It just never made it to the edit. And what I want to know, like everyone else, is why? Is it because there was no kind of recovery for him, so it didn't finish it? Is it because it was too recent and it didn't finish the documentary on this, you know, happy-go-lucky ending of those two dancing in the kitchen and loving life? I do not know. But the director, who is Fisher Stevens, said that they did have a conversation about the controversy, and ultimately they chose not to include it in the edit as it felt kind of dated, which I think is kind of a sloppy excuse because it's not really that dated, you know. It was kind of a big deal. I think they're just playing it down a little bit there. Dated, I don't know, you mentioned an awful lot about him being a child, which wasn't very important to the story, so I don't know how you can say that's dated. He goes on to say, honestly, if I had another episode, we could have gotten into that, but it just didn't feel relevant. He also goes on to explain that not many people knew about it, because it was massive here in the UK, but he says that people in America, they haven't really heard of it, so it's not really that important, it's not really that relevant. So if you are one of these people in America who's not heard of it, allow me to explain what you've possibly missed here. So in 2022, the World Cup was in Qatar. David Beckham accepted a role as the ambassador for the World Cup, which was a deal reportedly to be worth more than £100,000. So it was a big payday for him. However, the backlash comes from the fact that Qatar has got all these human rights issues that don't align with a lot of other countries and, you know, the modern day world, particularly LGBTQ plus and their community. So David subsequently came under fire for accepting this role, and it was publicly called out by the comedian Joe Lycett, who did this whole thing of, you know, shredding money, and it was a massive thing. And here in the UK, it was a huge story. I thought it was like that for the rest of the world. Supposedly it wasn't, so do look into this in your own time if you want to learn more about it. But that's the basics of it. So what did he say about it that didn't make the documentary? Well, Sky News reported that after being asked if he had done his homework about what life was like for LGBTQ plus people in Qatar, where homosexuality is illegal, David insisted that I always do that, insinuating that he always does his homework, so he knew all about this. He also went on to say that he's going to let the football do the talking, and it was a great tournament and a lot of people were happy about the tournament. He said that he had a lot of conversations with the LGBTQ plus community when he was there, and that they said they had enjoyed the game and they felt like it was the safest World Cup they've been to in a long time. It was an important competition and one that he was proud to be part of. So he's unapologetic about this, he sticks by it, but obviously there's this whole backlash. The second thing, it was mentioned, but it was largely glossed over, which was this affair that he had. They didn't even mention the woman's name, so I know a lot of people are thinking, well, what went on there? Because you mentioned how traumatic the affair was, but you didn't mention anything else. It's also important that you never denied it. See, back in this time, there was a lot of accusations about what David was doing, and largely they fought back about this, but they never fought this one case, and they had always denied it. They had always denied that the affair happened. But in the documentary, what's important to note is they never deny it. They talk about how it affected them, and they never say it was true. They largely insinuate that it did happen. You want to know who the woman was that he cheated on Victoria Beckham who he cheated with, or who he cheated on Victoria Beckham with? This is the woman right here. This is who she was. Now that is a lady named Rebecca Loos. She was David Beckham's PA at the time. I think she's an English girl, but she had moved over and she lived in Madrid. So when he moved over to join the Real Madrid football team, her job was to kind of show him round and make him comfortable there and help him out with things like the language and just help him have a good time, which clearly they did. These rumours started spouting. You know, this is at the time Victoria was back home in England, and then she came out and she sold her story. Always denied it, which at the time I remember it seemed like maybe she did lie. I mean, she got paid, she was a PA before this, she got paid 350 grand to sell her story, and then she had an agent who went on to say that within the month after selling her story, she went on to make a whopping 800,000 grand. And she went on to live a good life after that. She moved back to England. She started doing like TV appearances and became this personality. She was on this show called The Farm, where she was like a pig. Honestly, you can look this up, you can Google it.
The pig then has to be stimulated, and in the UK it's common practice to simply don gloves and use your hands.
She was right there touching up that pig for television. It was, you know, great for views, great for viewership.
The grip is, you need a firm grip.
Yeah.
In order that he is happy with the lock.
Feels like he's in, yeah.
But you don't strangle it.
Okay.
She started doing Playboy and magazines like Zoo and Nuts. Moving on. So it had seemed at the time like she was kind of playing it up a little bit, and like she was doing this just for the fame and the money, and he always denied it. But then in this documentary, he never denied it. So that's the story for you. Rebecca Loos was his PA, and this was like not like a one-time thing. It went on for about 4 months. And the third thing, and probably the most important thing I reckon to this story and what they absolutely skimmed over in the documentary, was the time he had cornrows. Remember David Beckham with cornrows? Not a single picture of him with his cornrows shown up in that documentary. Now I did read something that he regrets this, so he probably asked it not to be included. You know, in today's world, back then that was fine. I remember he got cornrows. Everyone in England then went on to get cornrows. But in this day and age, it's kind of looked at as more cultural appropriation. And, you know, I think he did like this whole thing where he was meeting Nelson Mandela and he had his cornrows, and it looked a little bit cultural appropriation-ish. So they probably missed that out. But hey, David Beckham did have cornrows. Look at this. Put that on your screensaver because that actually happened. And anyway, I'm fresh off watching the documentary. There are three 3 things that you have possibly missed. Let me know your opinion on that in the old comments. Oh, and just before you go, I did want to mention one little thing off the cuff, nothing to do with David Beckham or the documentary, so feel free to skip out of this video now. I just wanted to say that an older video that I posted has been getting a little bit more traction, not a lot, just a little bit, enough to garner me a few new subscribers. And if you are one of these new subscribers, I just want to say thank you for subscribing. I know that was an older video, so I hope these newer videos are still relevant. I'm still finding my feet with this channel and finding what really works, testing different things. So if there's any kind of video you like to see the most, like for example this one is very casual, no script, no big lighting, no fancy editing, it's just me completely unscripted. I suppose you would say this is an off the cuff video. I know for some people they enjoy watching these, I know for some people they prefer it when I take the time to actually research the video and put some real effort into forming these scripted opinions. But I kind of like these authentic ones, so do let me know which ones you prefer. And for everyone who's just seen this video for the first time and they're not subscribed, feel free to subscribe if you want to, don't if you don't want to. And thank you for watching. Until the next video, goodbye.